Pregame.com.
National League Central battle on Sunday. The Pittsburgh Pirates travel to the Cincinnati Reds. VR, you got first place versus second place here. Who would have thunk it? The Pittsburgh Pirates are hanging around, but boy, you know, come Sunday, you know,
it's season time.
Yeah.
I mean, it may sound a little premature to say this is the season, but you get swept, you find yourself 6 games out, you're not catching them. It's a wild card after that.
And we talked about this a couple weeks ago when Detroit and the White Sox had that big series, you know, how it was important not to get swept in that. For this young ball club, they gotta at least win one of these 3 games here. And, you know, there's some interesting pitching matchups. But Sunday you got Bettors versus Bailey. You know, Bedard, this guy, he's either really good or really bad.
Or awful.
I mean, he leads the majors in losses. But yet, at times, you see him pitch and you scratch your head and say, how does this guy have 12 losses already?
When he strikes out a batter an inning almost.
Well, you know, actually, when I was in Pittsburgh, 2 starts ago, we went to the game against the Cubs. He goes 7 innings, gives up 2 hits, strikes out 11.
Yeah.
And then 5 days later, in a rematch in Chicago,
gets lit up because
and he's in his shower.
The thing is, he averages 4 walks per 9 innings. You get base runners on, you're putting yourself in a position where your whip's going to go up, and when your whip goes up, you're letting up runs. There's no way around it, and you're losing games. Especially when you have an offense that isn't capable of putting up 6-7 runs on a nightly basis. Pittsburgh's 21st in runs scored.
They are, and that's a stat that, you know, that's one of those ones that you want to point out, that they were so bad offensively
early
at the beginning of the season.
They've made up for it.
If you would adjust that and do it over the last 30 days, they're not 20.
No, I agree. I totally agree.
But Bedard, his problem is on the road. He is getting absolutely lit up when he pitches on the road. His road ERA is 6.75. When he pitches at PNC Park, 2.72. I mean, you talk about night and day difference between home and away. This guy is the poster child for that. This is your free pick. Tell me where you're going here.
I'm going to tell you this. I love what Pittsburgh's doing. But Pittsburgh's a team, Marco, that you want to back at home, because they're an undervalued team, and you're usually not being asked to lay a lot, even when they're favored. And more times than not, you're getting a good team that wins 65% of their home games at -110. You know, so that's a team I want to look for to back at home. But on the road, they're below 500, which tells me I want to get plus money. You will get plus money in this spot, but Cincinnati's just way too profitable when you look at this team at home. They're 33-19 at home. They're if you flat bet them 100 a game, you'd be up over 2,000 betting this team because they're so undervalued. Everyone's waiting for them to have a drop-off. I don't see it. And I'm going to tell you why I like them in this spot. And it may be the square side taking the home Cincinnati team. And I know I've been cold, and this isn't really a safe bet, but I just think this is the right side. This is a chance for Cincinnati to show we are the team in the Central. The only one that's going to contest us is St. Louis, if St. Louis goes on a run. And I think St. Louis, we got to be careful of. We saw what they did last year. And when you go on a run like that, it's kind of like in the NFL, one of those New England type teams that just get us in the playoffs, we'll take it from there. And I think with St. Louis, as August starts rolling, if you see this team win 3-4 out of every 5 games, it's a team you want to be backing, and Cincinnati will be looking over their shoulder the rest of the way. But in this game, I think it's Cincinnati's going to show up. And I think with Bailey, as long as he could keep the ball in the ballpark, because he does average over 1 home run every 9 innings, he'll be okay. His strikeout to walk ratio is almost 4-1. That's insane, for someone that you really didn't expect this from. The only worry I have with Bailey is he's already pitched 131 innings. That's the only concern I have, and how long will he be able to keep that 4-1 ratio if his arm gets tired. But I think he could keep Pittsburgh to a couple runs. If you could keep them to 3 runs or less, pitch around McCutchen, and get to Bedard with some walks, you know, score some runs, this is a very winnable game.
Well, I can't say that I disagree with you. On the game itself, I'm on the fence. And,
You're Pittsburgh. You want to see Pittsburgh go in and sweep them. Come on.
Well, yeah, that would be
beautiful for baseball.
It would absolutely, you know, the best thing for baseball. Now the suits would all be hanging themselves by their ties, but if you could get Oakland and Pittsburgh, Matt, small market, you know, baseball, it would be unbelievable.
Pepsi and Coke would be like, do we really got to sponsor this World Series? You'd see RC Cola.
But the concern I have with Bailey, and I'm leaning to the over in this game. Bailey, he had 5 straight games where he held the opponents to 2 runs or less. Go into that 6th start, which was his last start, they spot him 6 runs early. He's got a 6-0 lead, 2nd, 3rd inning. He gets to the 4th inning with a big lead like that and just absolutely falls apart. 9 hits, they score 6 runs. They got to take him out. He doesn't make the 4th
Do you think, though, that could be because you get a lead? Like, I was reading what Peavy was writing, and Peavy was so hot for a while, remember? And then he went 1-6. Well, the team went 1-6 over his 7th start, but they only gave him a run support average, 1.5 whatever runs per game. And he said when you have a lead, you pitch differently. You could be more aggressive. Sometimes that works for you. Sometimes that works against you, because if you're not thinking and you just saying, you know what, I got a 5-0 lead, I'm just going to throw it down the heart of the plate. If they could catch it, catch it. You know, I think you don't have to be as strategic. So it could be, was it a case of that, or you think it's arm fatigue and he's hanging the ball up there now?
Well, that's one of those questions that, it's going to go, which way is it going to go? I got to be a little bit concerned. His ERA at home, we talked about how bad, Bedard is on the road. Bailey's ERA at home is 5.17, where on the road it's 2.63. In playing that ballpark in Cincinnati, it's definitely not a pitcher's ballpark.
Yeah, that's true.
I think this is one of those ones that, especially if Cincinnati happens to take the first 2 games of this series and now all of a sudden
open it up.
It's opened up to a 5-game lead. You just might get a little lackadaisical on there, and you just get one of those games where both pitchers.
Yeah, where it's a 9-8.
So my
pick of the week is the over.
But I got to lean to the over there with it. But if you put the gun to my head on which side I would take in this game, I would have to probably say I would be on Cincinnati.
The one thing I do want to add is make sure Phillips, Valdez, Ludwig are playing on Sunday, because right now they're not 100%. And like you said, if they take the first 2 games of this series, they find themselves up 5 games. We know managers are prone to give their guys rest. Now you say, why would you rest them divisional game when it's so huge? If these guys are banged up, they're not 100%. Right. You win 2 games already. You may say, you know what, take a break. Let's see if the youngsters could go in there and get a big win, because that's huge for their, mentality, for their confidence. If you could bench your stars and go in there and put these younger guys and sweep, these guys are all of a sudden, man, they're ready to play ball.
This is a good point, and just to steer away from this game for a second, because it's a great point that you're bringing up, and something that the listeners can use for their arsenal and handicapping. When you have Thursday day game,
that getaway game,
or a Wednesday day game that's finishing up a series, and the Sunday games, those are the days you really need to look at the starting lineups as late as you possibly can, because managers are prone, if they're going to give a star a day off, it's generally in the situation where it's a getaway game, it's a day game following a night game. And a perfect example of that, and I used it on the Betting First Look last Sunday, was I went against Pittsburgh. I went with the Houston Astros, who had lost 12?
Right.
The Pirates sat down McCutchen on Sunday.
Yeah, I had Houston on that Sunday game. I took plus 1.5. I wasn't as ballsy as you, but.
Well, I had some issues with that area last week, so I had a big set of stones. So I went ahead and did it. But nice segue there. But you have to look at that stuff, and it's don't just automatically assume the lineups are going to be what they're normally.
Because you have a big bet on Pittsburgh, and you check, and you're like, McCutchen's not in there. all of a sudden you're looking at that ticket and you're looking in the mirror and you see a box. It's like square.
Yeah, you look out in center field and you don't see that hair flowing around.
Yeah, you feel like a damn idiot.
So that's a handicapping tip for you guys. Check those lineups very carefully on day games, Wednesdays and Thursdays, and of course on
You think
Sunday.
Cincy's for real? I think they are, man. 5th in Major League Baseball run differential. I know Pythagorean wins-losses says they've won 10.5 more games than they should have. So if you take away those 10.5 games, you know, this is a mediocre team at best. But looking at their stats, Marco, I'm telling you, pitching-wise, defense-wise, offense, they're mediocre. 15th in runs scored, 11 in batting average, stuff like that. 17th, I mean. But when you look at their pitching, and pitching wins in September and October, that's why I think this team's for real. I think they do have pitching.
I love Johnny Cueto, but
that's what I'm saying. You can't name their 5 starters and say these guys are studs.
After him, who
I agree. I agree. Where's it coming from? I don't know. You know, I agree.
Matt Latos has been good at times this year. And
bullpen.
Then, a guy like Bailey, he can, he's good on the road and he's bad at,
I'd like to see. I remember the Big Red Machine. And I'd like to see them turn it, have a.
Who didn't want to be Johnny
I have a future on St. Louis, so to be honest with you, I'd love to see them crash and burn. But hey, it's nice for them to be winning.
All right. Well, there you have it. VR says to take Cincinnati. I'm giving you a twofer in this one. I like the over in it, so take Cincinnati in the over. I think
damn, we went favorite and over.
Oh, man.
Let's talk about square, dude.
Hey, square wins sometimes.
Hey,
second half of the season, a little more.
Hey, I'll tell you what, brother. Right now in baseball, you can't be afraid to lay some favors because there's some teams that are going to be quitting before you know it. Got to pick your spots. You can't blindly go in there lay 150s, but you pick your spots. I'm looking for good teams to back right now. When you're not getting points, which we know the spread's the great equalizer in sports, I'm not going to hope the Houston Astros win for me when they're winning 1 out of every 10 games. Plus 200 ain't going to get it done.
Ain't going to get it done. Unless you're smart enough to pick the one.
That one time, yeah. And not go 0-9 the rest of the way.
He's Vegas Runner. I'm Marco D'Angelo. That wraps up this week's videos here at pregame.tv. We'll be back next week with the entire cast of characters breaking down all the baseball action. And next week, yes, preseason football.
You got a lock for that Hall of Fame game, don't you?
Yeah, we're still working on it. All right. We'll talk to you next week. Thanks for watching, guys.